Before we dive in, if you're drawn to darkness, danger, and the hidden corners of human depravity, smash that subscribe button, hit like, and leave a comment, because the story you're about to hear will haunt your thoughts long after it ends. Welcome to the shadows. The fog clung to the California coastline like a living thing, thick and suffocating, blurring the jagged cliffs above Pelican Bay Prison. The sun had already fallen behind the horizon, and the Pacific whispered its icy secrets to anyone who dared to listen. Down on the winding service road that led to the prison gates, a lone patrol car cruised cautiously, headlights piercing through the mist. Officer Caleb Monroe's fingers drummed nervously against the steering wheel. He wasn't a rookie, but tonight felt off. 2 hours earlier, the body of a young man had been discovered at the edge of the coastal cliffs, limbs splayed unnaturally, eyes wide open, staring into the void. No identification, no witnesses, just the cold, concrete silence of a life ended abruptly. Monroe had seen enough carnage in his 10 years to know one thing. This wasn't random. Inside the precinct, the tension was already palpable. Detective Lila Vargas stood over a cluttered evidence table, a steaming cup of coffee forgotten at her elbow. She had a reputation for seeing the patterns others missed, a sixth sense honed on the underbelly of California's most dangerous territories. Tonight, her instincts screamed that the cliffs weren't the final stop. They were the beginning. The victim, identified later as 23-year-old Marcus Rico Torres, had a past tangled with Pelican Bay. He had spent 4 years inside, a low-level enforcer for the Aryan Brotherhood, and had been released just 6 months ago. Now he was dead, and the circumstances were murky, almost ritualistic. There was a certain cruelty to the positioning of his body, an eerie symmetry that made Vargas' stomach turn. Outside, the fog had thickened, turning the patrol car's lights into ghostly beams. Monroe parked near the edge and approached the scene cautiously. The scent of the sea mixed with something else, iron, wet concrete, and something faintly metallic, like a warning etched in blood. He bent down, inspecting the ground. Footprints led away from the cliff's edge, uneven and hurried, disappearing into the brush. Whoever had done this hadn't gone far. Back at the station, Vargas scrolled through Rico's social media, piecing together the last known movements. There were cryptic messages, vague references to debts owed, and friends who spoke in nervous whispers. Something had been gnawing at him, something deep and dangerous. One message stood out: "I can't trust anyone, not even the shadows." By midnight, a knock rattled Vargas' office door. It was Agent Michael Conway, federal liaison from the Northern California Violent Crimes Task Force. Tall, precise, with eyes that scanned every detail like a predator, Conway was no stranger to Pelican Bay's labyrinthine networks. "Detective," he said, voice low and urgent. "You're not dealing with a street brawl. This is Pelican Bay. Everything comes full circle there. Debts, betrayals, revenge. Rico didn't just slip back into normal life. He was running from something or someone." Vargas frowned. "We're talking about an ex-con with enemies on every corner of the Bay Area. Where do we even start?" Conway tapped a folder, the contents spilling onto the desk. Photographs, surveillance stills, and fragments of the jailhouse ledger that Rico had apparently managed to smuggle out before his release. Among the pages were names, dates, and locations. One entry caught Vargas' eye immediately: Project Concrete, Pelican Bay, Cell 13B. "Project Concrete?" she asked, her voice tight. Conway leaned back, a shadow crossing his sharp features. Rico got mixed up in something inside the prison, something not on the books. And if he was trying to walk away, someone wasn't going to let him. The next morning, Monroe returned to the cliffs for a closer sweep. His flashlight caught a glint near the rock face, a small metallic cylinder, partially buried in sand. He dug it out carefully. Inside were fragments of photographs, some letters, and a keyring with a single rusted key. The handwriting on one note was jagged, almost frantic. "They know what you took. Meet at the old quarry. Midnight. Come alone." Vargas and Conway exchanged glances over the note. The quarry had been abandoned for decades, a forgotten scar in the landscape. It was a perfect place for someone to vanish without a trace, and the perfect place for a trap. By evening, Rico's closest friend, a wiry man named Devin Blake, was brought in for questioning. Devin's eyes were red-rimmed, voice barely above a whisper. "Rico." He didn't want to die. He said they were building something inside. Something that could destroy people. I don't know what it is, but he was scared. Vargas leaned forward. "Who's they?" Devin shook his head. "I don't know names. Just men. Men from the Bay. From Pelican Bay. And someone close." He didn't trust anyone. The weight of Devin's confession hung over the room like a storm cloud. "Close," Vargas repeated, the word echoing. "Someone close. That means this isn't just gang-related. It's personal." Late that night, Monroe received a frantic call from a hiker. Footprints, too many of them, leading from the cliffside into the woods. And one solitary, chilling message carved into a tree near the path. "Concrete holds secrets. Beware the shadows that remember." The words chilled Monroe to the bone. He'd seen enough death to know fear was rational, not irrational, in situations like this. And if the messages were meant for him or Vargas, then someone was playing a dangerous game. As the investigation deepened, surveillance cameras were checked, phone records traced, and every connection in Rico's life scrutinized. But one pattern emerged, a series of unexplained disappearances dating back years, all linked to Pelican Bay's notorious Cell 13B. And then the breakthrough came. A security camera on the edge of the old quarry, barely functional, captured a shadowy figure dragging something large and bulky into the darkness. The timestamp, 11:47 p.m., the night Rico died. Vargas and Conway stared at the grainy footage, every pixel screaming of hidden motives, betrayal, and a calculated cruelty. "That's no random killer," Conway said, jaw tight. "That's someone who knows exactly how to leave no trace." Vargas' mind raced. Every theory they had, revenge, gang rivalry, smuggled contraband, felt small against the weight of what this quarry represented. And if Rico's warning about Project Concrete was true, they were looking at something far bigger than a murder, something systematic, something that had been hiding in plain sight, orchestrated by people who had already tasted power, blood, and fear inside the cold walls of Pelican Bay. And then, just when they thought they had a lead, Devin Blake made a shocking admission. He'd remembered something, a detail he had tried to bury, a name no one had expected. A man who was supposed to be dead, a man who had walked out of Pelican Bay years ago, vanished without a trace, and now, according to Devin, was pulling the strings behind Rico's death. But when they opened the basement door of the abandoned warehouse connected to the quarry, what they found changed everything. Concrete walls, damp and cold, stretched endlessly, and inside, a series of meticulously arranged cells, each one containing personal belongings, cryptic symbols, and photographs, all of them pointing to people who had disappeared after touching Pelican Bay. And at the very center, chained to a rusted post, was a small wooden box, its lid scratched with desperate marks and a keyhole that matched the rusted key found at the cliffs. The silence of the basement was deafening. Every breath, every heartbeat seemed amplified. Whoever had built this had been waiting, watching. And now, the past and the present collided in a way that would shatter everyone's understanding of the crime. Vargas swallowed hard, glancing at Conway. This isn't just a murder. It's a message. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the basement, something shifted. A whisper of movement. The sound of someone or something watching. The game had just begun. The basement smelled of damp concrete and rust, a stench so thick it clawed at the back of Detective Vargas' throat. The key from the cliffs fit perfectly into the box, the lock clicking with a metallic finality that sounded louder than it should have. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the lid, revealing a collection of photographs, documents, and a small recorder. The images were grim, men and women, all tied to Pelican Bay, each marked with dates and strange symbols. Some faces she recognized from missing person files. Others were new, as if the prison itself had been a stage for a hidden network of crimes. "Who's doing this?" Conway muttered, scanning the images. "It's not just revenge. This is organized, calculated, and it's bigger than Rico." Vargas turned the recorder on. A crackling voice filled the basement, low and chilling. "They came to Pelican Bay thinking the walls will protect them. Concrete holds more than cells. It holds memories, and some debts cannot be erased. The voice stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. But the message was clear. Someone had orchestrated a series of disappearances tied directly to the prison, and Rico had been caught in the middle. Outside, the night was alive with fog and distant waves crashing against the cliffs. Monroe paced near the entrance, his flashlight sweeping the darkness. He'd just received a report. Devin Blake had vanished. No note, no call, no trace. The only clue was a single shoe left near his apartment door. Gone, Monroe said flatly, voice tight. Just like that. You think it's connected? Conway nodded. It has to be. Whoever's behind this knows we're looking. They're controlling the narrative, and they're not afraid to escalate. The detectives returned to the precinct with the evidence, but sleep was impossible. Vargas pored over Rico's jailhouse ledger again. There was a pattern: dates, times, names, and cryptic annotations. One series of entries stood out, labeled Project Concrete, Expansion. Some of the names were familiar, high-profile inmates who had been released quietly over the past decade. Others were unknown, suggesting an international network. We're looking at more than a gang operation, Vargas said. This is systematic, almost institutional. Someone used Pelican Bay to build something inside the prison, something that continued outside. Conway's phone rang, sharp and urgent. The voice on the other end was a security analyst from the Federal Task Force. Detectives, you need to see this immediately. We just intercepted encrypted communications. It mentions the next release and a location: Northern California, near the old logging facility outside Crescent City. Vargas grabbed her coat. Let's move. If this is a trail Rico left, we don't have time. The logging facility was abandoned, a hulking skeleton of rusted beams and broken windows, swallowed by overgrown forest. Every step crunching on dead leaves heightened the tension. Monroe scanned perimeter, while Vargas and Conway moved cautiously inside. The interior smelled of decay and mildew. Sunlight filtered through broken panes, casting fractured shadows. Then they found it, a small door, nearly invisible behind stacks of rotting lumber. It led to a narrow corridor, damp and oppressive. The walls were scratched with names and dates, like a ledger carved into the concrete. At the end of the corridor, a single chair sat under a swinging light, and on it a figure. Vargas' heart froze. It was Devin Blake. He was alive, but his face was pale, bruised, eyes wide with terror. He clutched a notebook, its pages filled with frantic scrawls. They're building something, Devin whispered, voice barely audible. Inside Pelican Bay, it's not just revenge, it's control. They choose who disappears and who gets out. Rico, he tried to expose it. Conway leaned in, pressing for clarity. Control? What do you mean? Devin's eyes darted around the dark corners of the facility. It's like a shadow within the prison. They track everything, everyone. They test people, mark them, then decide. Some get out, some don't. Project Concrete. It's bigger than anyone realizes. They've been planning it for years. Before Vargas could ask more, a sudden sound echoed through the building, a metallic clang, followed by heavy footsteps. Monroe raised his flashlight, revealing a figure in the shadows. A man, tall, wearing a hood, face partially obscured. His movements were deliberate, controlled. You shouldn't be here, the man said, voice calm but icy. This isn't your fight. Vargas stepped forward, badge raised. Step away from him. Now. The man tilted his head, considering them for a moment, then lunged. Monroe intercepted him, and the struggle was immediate, violent. Metal struck metal, the sound bouncing through the empty halls. Vargas grabbed Devin and pulled him behind a column, heart pounding. Conway joined the fray, subduing the intruder, who finally collapsed under their combined force. They ripped the hood off. It was someone none of them expected. Jerome Jax Corbin, a former inmate and notorious enforcer who had been reported dead years ago. Conway froze. He's alive. Vargas' mind raced. Jax had been tied to multiple disappearances inside Pelican Bay. If he was alive, orchestrating events from the shadows. Rico's warnings made terrifying sense. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about power, secrecy, and fear, a network that spanned inside and outside the prison walls. Devin shivered. They watch everything. Cameras, guards, everyone is part of it or scared of it. Rico, he thought he could leave, but they always know. Vargas took a deep breath. We need to understand how deep this goes. Jax is our key, but if he stays quiet, she didn't finish the sentence. They all knew the consequences. As they led Jax toward their vehicles, a chilling realization hit Conway. Someone else is coming. Someone higher up. Jax isn't the top. He's the enforcer. And they're not going to wait to strike. And they were right. Minutes later, the forest surrounding the logging facility seemed alive with movement. Shadows flitted between the trees, and distant whispers carried on the wind. Vargas got twisted. Whoever orchestrated Project Concrete had eyes everywhere. Back at the precinct, the evidence from the basement and the logging facility was compiled. Each document, each photograph, and every fragment of Rico's ledger painted a portrait of a meticulously controlled operation. But one thing was clear. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Then a phone call came that froze Vargas in her tracks. Devin's voice trembled. They took my sister. I think they're warning me. I don't know what to do. Conway slammed the receiver down. It's happening again. They're escalating. They know we're close. And now they're targeting anyone who talks. Vargas clenched her fists. Every piece of evidence, every shadowed corridor, every cryptic note now pointed to a terrifying truth. Project Concrete wasn't just a series of disappearances. It was a network of manipulation, intimidation, and murder built inside the prison and extending far beyond its walls. And in the quiet moments that followed, as the city slept and fog rolled over the coast, they realized the most dangerous part wasn't what they had uncovered so far. It was what was still hidden. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching, waiting, and they had just made the first move in a game that would test every line of trust, every moral limit, and every ounce of courage. The key question now wasn't who had killed Rico, or even why. It was, who would survive next? And when the team traced the next encrypted communication, a single word sent chills down their spines. Corey. Before we dive in, remember, some truths are too dangerous to whisper. Some shadows never leave. If you're ready for the final descent into Pelican Bay's darkest secrets, hold on tight. The old quarry was alive with the echoes of the past. Rusted machinery jutted out of the earth like skeletal fingers, and the mist rolling off the water clung to the crumbling walls, dampening sound and sense alike. Detective Vargas, Agent Conway, and Officer Monroe approached carefully, vehicles parked at a safe distance, engines idling softly. The encrypted message had been clear. Corey, midnight, witness the reckoning. Whoever had sent it was confident. Too confident. Devin Blake had been moved again, this time they believed as bait. His sister's disappearance was no coincidence. It was leverage, and they had to act fast. The three law enforcement officers advanced on the quarry's entrance, flashlights cutting through the fog. Shadows danced across the walls, unnatural, almost deliberate. Every step crunched over broken glass, twisted metal, and loose gravel. The silence was oppressive, only broken by the occasional call of a distant bird or the whisper of the wind. Then they saw it, a row of concrete cells, similar to the one in the abandoned logging facility, lined the quarry floor. Inside, women and men, all bound, faces pale, eyes wide, hearts racing. Devin's sister was among them, clutching her arms around herself, trembling. And at the center of it all, standing tall on a raised platform, was Jerome Jax Corbin. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, a figure emerged, unmistakable, chillingly familiar. It was Gregory Hall, former warden of Pelican Bay, officially retired years ago. But here he was orchestrating Project Concrete in ways no one could have imagined. He had used his position inside the prison to manipulate, track, and exploit inmates, cultivating a network of loyal, fearful enforcers. Jax had been his instrument, the quarry his stage. Detectives. Hall's voice carried over the open space, calm, almost cordial. You finally arrive. Punctual as always. I hope you're ready to understand the full scope of my vision. Conway gritted his teeth. You're insane. This isn't vision. It's murder, kidnapping, extortion. Hall smiled faintly. Ah, but perspective matters. Inside Pelican Bay, I learned one truth. Some people are expendable, some are useful, and some are meant to be remembered. Rico was careless. Devin, just curious. And now you are here. Witnesses. Vargas stepped forward, heart hammering, hand hovering over her weapon. Let them go, Hall. This ends tonight. Hall chuckled. Ends? Oh, my dear detective, it only begins. Project Concrete was never about death. It's about legacy, control, understanding the human soul when trapped, broken, and rebuilt in concrete. That is why Rico had to die. That is why Devin's sister was brought here, a lesson, if you will. Jack shifted beside him, chains rattling, but his expression flickered. Something inside him broke. The facade of loyalty cracked. He whispered under his breath, barely audible. He's insane. Too far. Suddenly, Hall raised a remote device. The concrete cells began locking automatically, doors clanging shut, metal echoing like gunshots in the quarry. Panic surged. Devin cried out and his sister screamed, thrashing against her bonds. Monroe and Conway moved quickly. We need to disable that system. Conway shouted, sprinting to a control panel hidden behind debris. Sparks flew as he pried open the box. Wires exposed. The tension was unbearable. One wrong move, and the machinery would seal permanently. Vargas stayed with Devin and his sister, trying to calm them. Listen to me. We're not leaving without you. You'll be safe. A sudden commotion. Jax turned on Hall. Enough of your preaching. He broke free of his bonds using tools hidden in his clothing, a skill honed over years inside Pelican Bay. He grabbed a heavy pipe, swinging at Hall with controlled fury. Hall stumbled, momentarily disoriented. Vargas seized a moment to unlock the nearest cell, freeing Devin's sister. Monroe followed, taking down one of Hall's loyal enforcers who had remained hidden in the shadows. Conway, hand shaking but precise, disabled the control panel, halting the automatic locking sequence. Metal doors froze mid-motion, their thunderous clanging suspended. Hall's calm facade shattered. You dare defy me? After everything I've built. Jax lunged and Hall barely sidestepped. The two men circled each other, a dangerous dance of power and survival. Vargas realized the only way to end this was to confront the man who had orchestrated so much pain directly. She stepped forward, gun raised, voice steady. Hall, step away from the controls. You're done. Hall's eyes flickered, almost human for a brief second, before returning to cold calculation. You think you won, but you can't understand the system I created. The concrete, it never forgets. But then, as if fate intervened, Jack struck decisively, hitting Hall's side, sending him crashing against the platform. Hall fell to ground, groaning, immobilized. Conway secured the area, while Monroe restrained Jax afterward, acknowledging the enforcer's reluctant role in saving lives tonight. Vargas rushed to Devin and his sister, embracing them briefly before leading them to safety. The others were freed one by one, the quarry echoing with cries of relief and exhaustion. Outside, police backup arrived, flashing lights cutting through the fog like knives. Hall was taken into custody, the remnants of Project Concrete exposed to the world. Each photograph, ledger, and hidden camera was cataloged, revealing years of meticulous manipulation, exploitation, and terror, the hidden life of Pelican Bay beyond its official walls. But just as the team exhaled, a final, chilling message appeared on Conway's seized tablet. A single image, grainy, from one of Hall's hidden cameras. A new cell, under construction, labeled with dates months into the future, and a note scrawled in familiar handwriting. Concrete remembers always. Vargas stared at the screen, cold realization settling in. Hall was behind bars, the victims freed, but the network he had created was larger than one man. Some stones of Project Concrete might never be lifted. Monroe broke the silence. Do you think it's really over? Vargas shook her head slowly. For now, but people like Hall don't disappear easily. They leave marks. They leave lessons. And those lessons, they can infect others. The concrete never forgets. As the fog rolled off the cliffs and Pacific waves whispered their eternal rhythm, the team knew one undeniable truth. The shadows of Pelican Bay were far from gone. They had won the battle, but the war over fear, power, and control, had only just begun. And somewhere in the quiet of the cell no one knew existed, another key was waiting, another ledger being written. The soul of Project Concrete lived on,